This is Business Week Armenia, Civilnet's weekly economic news digest. Here's what's making headlines in Armenia this week. A global arbitration body has ordered Armenia to halt its seizure of the country's power grid, arguing the nationalization of Electric Networks of Armenia would violate an international investment treaty. In an emergency order this week, the Arbitration Institute of the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce in Sweden ordered Armenia not to implement legislation passed earlier this month, allowing the government to seize ENA from owner Samvel Karapetyan, whose family sought the proceedings on behalf of the jailed billionaire. A copy of the decision obtained by CivilNet specifically orders Armenia not to change the utilities management, interfere with its usual business operations, or seize or sell its assets. The order was issued on an interim basis, CivilNet's fact-checking team confirmed, meaning the decision will lapse in 30 days if a full arbitration case is not brought. Prior to the order, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan dismissed ENA's acting head, David Hazinyan, and replaced him with Romanos Petrosyan, a close political ally, on an interim basis. Reacting to the Stockholm body's decision, Pashinyan's office defended its actions, saying Petrosyan's appointment fell beyond the arbitrators' scope and arguing the move was needed to maintain public order. Separately, Justice Minister Serbohi Galyan suggested Armenia will defy the order, telling reporters there is a possibility of not enforcing that decision if it is contrary to public order. In contrast, members of Karapetyan's family hailed the order as a clear win, but did not immediately say if they plan to bring a full arbitration case to prevent the Stockholm body's decision from lapsing. The saga over ENA began last month when law enforcement arrested owner Karapetyan on charges of making calls for regime change after the billionaire spoke out against Pashinyan's ongoing feud with the Armenian Apostolic Church. Shortly after that, lawmakers passed a bill allowing the government to seize control of ENA, while law enforcement launched raids on dozens of locations, apparently connected to Karapetyan as part of a probe into his sprawling business empire. Since his arrest, investigators have slapped Karapetyan, a dual Armenian-Russian citizen, with additional charges of fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. Karapetyan's lawyers reject the charges against him and call them politically motivated. Regardless, the government's move to seize ENA and suggestion it may not comply with an international arbitration order have spooked the private sector, with a number of prominent business leaders and former senior officials warning that it could threaten Armenia's attractiveness to foreign investors. Despite that criticism, Pashinyan has continued to insist that improving the country's business environment is a priority for his administration. Fitch, one of the big three global ratings agencies, has affirmed Armenia's BB- sovereign credit rating with a stable outlook, referencing the country's robust macroeconomic policy framework and strong growth, which is supporting a rise in per capita income. However, it flagged in a press release late last week that the small size of the economy, fiscal deficits that will remain high relative to peers, weak external finances, high financial sector dollarization, and geopolitical risks could all threaten Armenia's creditworthiness. Looking ahead, Fitch warned that an increase in Armenia's debt-to-GDP ratio, or a sustained decline in Armenia's international reserves or current account deficits, could all lead to a credit downgrade in the future. Conversely, action on Armenia's debt, like a decrease in the debt-to-GDP ratio, or a reduction of the proportion of debt held in foreign exchange, plus sustained economic growth, could lead to a positive rating action. Fitch last affirmed Armenia's BB- rating in January. That rating is considered speculative grade, also commonly known as junk, and indicates an elevated vulnerability to default risk. The agency rates the creditworthiness of both Azerbaijan and Georgia more highly. Credit rating agencies like Fitch evaluate a country's ability to pay back debt and its likelihood of defaulting. And as always, please follow CivilNet for the latest news and independent reporting from our contributors on the ground here in Armenia.